Hey, I'm back. This is Chandler for Melder Production, and today I thought I'd show you how you can use MPhatik. For those that don't know, MPhatik is a dynamic processor. It's not a normal dynamic processor though, but it will allow you to do things like compress your sounds, distort your sounds, or add reverb without really changing the dynamics. It's interesting in that way, so it allows you to add a little bit of space, distortion, or compression without changing the attack of your sounds if you don't want to, and you can actually blend in how much you want or don't want. So first I'll let you hear just a drum track I have. It's very easy with nothing on it. Okay, now let's zero in on the kick drum so you can hear that. Again, no processing. Okay, now let's go into MPhatik. We have it on now, and let's hear what it does, and let's go over some of the things it's doing. You can probably hear it added some depth there, and that's probably coming from the convolution reverb here. So we can do this, and we can change this from 100% to 50% to 0%, whatever we want. And it also has high pass and low pass filters. So let's turn these off first. Actually, leave these on, and I'll mess with these so you can hear what they do. Now you're probably wondering why when I turned it up to 100% it didn't sound like a reverb and it didn't have that long tail, and that's because of this dynamics knob here. Now what this is going to do is it tells it to keep the dynamics of the output signal the same as the input signal. So if I turn this down, you'll hear that long reverb like this. Now sometimes you want that, but sometimes you want it to be tighter. So by using the dynamics knob, you can actually make reverb sounds tighter. And the same thing with the amp and other things. So I'll leave this here. And now let's mess with the amp, which will add distortion. And I can do the same thing with the compression. I can change the ratio, etc. So now, one thing I want to do here is I want to match the input and the output. As you see here, the output's a lot lower, so we're actually not comparing these honestly. So let me move the output up until they're matched. Now let me bypass it and unbypass it so you can hear what they sound like. The before. So that has a lot more kick when you turn on MPhatik. One thing that I noticed though is the release isn't really that smooth. As you see here, it's kind of jittering and fluttering. Now I think that's just because of the really low frequencies. And normally I just EQ that out of the kick altogether, but let's say you don't want to do that. What you can actually do is EQ the sidechain by hitting EQ here, turning on something like this, and moving it up to whatever level you want. So turn it on, and let's try this around 200 and see if that smooths it out a little bit. That seemed to make everything tighter to me. I like that sound better. So I could do that, but there's also other presets in here. Let's try bass drum enricher. As you saw in this one, the attack's turned up to give it even more of that transient attack. So as you can see, there's lots of things you can do with this, but let's hear this on another source. Let's try it on a snare. Let me make a copy of this. I'll solo the snare, have it bypassed at first here. Okay, now let's choose a preset. Let's try snare distortion high. I'll unbypass it, and let's listen to this. So you can hear it's just a little bit more, punch and kick to it. Now, one thing we can do is we can turn down the dynamics, and I'll let you hear what it would sound like if you only use distortion and compression like this. So you can see by using the dynamics, you can choose how tight or how loose you want that snare drum sound. Maybe I like it around here. And if I wanted to, I could add some reverb. Let's say drum here. Set maybe 10%, 11%. Let's see how this sounds. I like that. So now let's listen to both of these together. Listen to all the drums together now. So you can hear that makes a real difference, and it added that kind of space around it and more attack, but it didn't really change the transients at all. It made it sound louder and punchier. It made more emphasis on there, as the name implies, but it didn't really change the transients too much, which is what it's supposed to do. And I'll show you one more thing you can do with it. I have a synthesizer here. Let me solo this. Okay, so you get the idea, and I can use this here. If I copy it over, I'll just set it to default, and I can actually use this to duck this track or emphasize it if I want. So I'll go here to the snare, send it into here, and now I'll turn on the sidechain, and what it's going to do is send it in here, and I can choose to duck it here. So each time the snare hits, it's going to duck the synthesizer track. Let me turn it down at first, make sure it's not getting too loud. So as you heard, you can do all sorts of ducking with this. Remember, you can also change the range if you want more or less of an effect. You can look over here where it says G to see how much gain reduction is being produced. Also, you can change the sustain or the attack to get different effects with that. So be sure to experiment. And also the speed can affect things. But there's all sorts of different things you can do with this, all sorts of creative things. If instead of ducking, you want to do matching, it would also do this. On this type of track, it's probably not going to be too interesting. You'll only hear it when the drums come up, but let's hear what it sounds like. So for this use, I probably wouldn't use this, but ducking can work really well, especially for something like a bass or even for like a synthesizer in this case. I might use it off a snare or even maybe a hi-hat. So there's all sorts of creative things you can do with this, as well as just making your drums and percussion punchier and harder hitting. So if you have any questions about this, please leave them down below. If you like this, give me a thumbs up and be sure to check out all the other plugins at melderproduction.com. Until next time, see you.